Today we're going to look at the iLovBee B87. This was sent over to review for being thick, thoughtful, and budget friendly. So let's take a look. Jumping right into the unboxing here of the B87, the first thing we're greeted with is the user manual on the keyboard, but we're going to actually set that aside for a moment, and we're going to go ahead and concentrate on the rest of the contents of the box. First thing we're going to do is pull our back flap out here, and that should expose some goodies, which, first of all, it looks like we have our keycap and switch puller. This is your standard affair. It comes with pretty much any mechanical keyboard. Next up will be your USB-C cable. This is a non-braided standard USB-C cable. It is in white. Seems pretty thick. So we're going to set that aside as well as our last package here, which contains a few extra switches and a keycap, but just one keycap. So I guess we'll talk about that later. After that, we can set our box aside and focus back on our keyboard and our user manual. This has to be the biggest user manual I've ever seen in terms of like size of printing, not as many pages as it has, but I actually honestly kind of like it. The fact is, like, you don't have to search through this big user manual with this little print trying to figure out what your function keys do. This is a really nice, easy reference for you to understand the connectivity, your function keys. So props to them. It's a pretty cool idea. Next will be the keyboard itself. And let me tell you, it's kind of stunning. It's obviously a TKL with a knob. And then it also has a dedicated calculator key, which seems kind of funny, but I oddly enough use my calculator a lot, so it's kind of fun. Also, aesthetically, this keyboard matches my personal setup really well. I like the throwbacks of the retro style color grading, and I'm a pretty big fan of it. Now, when we talk about how heavy it is, this is crazy. For a TKL that's plastic that doesn't have a steel plate, this is on the heavier side of keyboards. And it's probably due to the thick injection molding, which we'll talk about later. Now, if we flip over to the back, you'll see that the colorway goes all the way to the back with a nice little badge in the middle. I like this attention to detail. I don't like when the back has this giant badge saying what company it is or what keyboard it is. I like when it's a really just small detail. Also, each four corners have rubber feet so the keyboard doesn't slide around your desk, as well as two sage feet so you can have whatever typing angle that works for you the best. Now, if we flip it up to the top, you can see that you have your USB-C connection, your mode switcher, and then your dongle for your wireless. This keyboard supports 2.4 wireless, Bluetooth, and USB-C and can be switched over easily. Also, it has this kind of pop out where it says live fast, drive faster. I'm not too sure what that means or what it's a reference to, so if you know, let me know. But I think it's a cool design, and that it pops out, but it's like meant to be there, and then it matches some of the keycaps. It's kind of a cool touch. So overall, I kind of dig it. Now, the last few things I want to talk about at the top of the keyboard is this indicator bar right here for your caps locks and numlock, as well as the iLovBee company branding. Now, if you know me, you know that I'm not a huge fan of company branding on the top or front of the keyboard. But if you're going to do it, I prefer it to be a small little thing like this. When you have them, you know, kind of like on the front, sprawled across the front and stuff like that, it just feels kind of cheaper to me. If you have a little badge or a little stamp, I totally get it. And if you have to do it, honestly, this is kind of the way to do it. It's a good look on how a company can make a nice looking and aesthetically pleasing keyboard with their name on it without it feeling overwhelming. And then lastly, for style, you have this interesting groove that goes in and out on each side of the keyboard. I think this is actually really neat. Not only does it separate the colorways, but it also feels like a unique design that hasn't really been pulled off in a clean way before. I've seen a design like this on a couple different keyboards, but not so aesthetically pleasing as this one. I don't know if it's because it matches the keycaps in the front and back, but all of this feels like a cohesive design that really makes sense in my head. And not just that, but in a big shelf of keyboards, this keyboard stands out. And for me, I really like that. So now that we've seen it, and we've looked at the sides, we've looked at the styling, we talked a little bit about it, let's go take a look at some of the RGB. And let's go hear out sounds. Fresh out of the box. No mods, no nothing. So let's head over and take a look. The keyboard hooked up via VIA, so it supports VIA software. And when the light's dimmed, we can see the RGB shine from the sides to the top. And it's extremely vibrant, and it looks great. So now, only thing left is to hear out sounds. All right, so iLovBee B87. What can I say? Honestly, I'm shocked by the typing experience. For an out-of-the-box experience, for a plastic keyboard that's $60, it's kind of crazy. It's got this nice like bounce to it, but it's still stiff, and the sound is fantastic. Everything is kind of really great for $60. Probably one of the best experience I've ever had for a $60 keyboard. And I'm kind of shocked, to be honest with you. I wasn't expecting it to be that great, but I think the only thing to figure out why this keyboard feels and sounds so good is to take it apart. So we're going to grab our keycap puller and go ahead and pull off a keycap and see what we're working with. All right, diving in for a closer look, we can see that they're double shot PBT cherry profile keycaps. Say that 3 times fast. But also we can notice that they have the clearest legends I've ever seen on a budget for the keyboard. Like, no joke. These legends on the entire keyboard look amazing. And for this price point, nuts. So now we've taken a closer look at a keycap. The last thing we gotta do is pull out a switch and take a closer look at the switches themselves. Pulling close, we can see that these are the iLovBee Aster switches. These are an in-house switch from iLovBee. They're a linear switch with 45 grams of force. They are factory pre-lubed, and they're a 5-pin switch. And honestly, after typing on it for a bit, they actually all feel pretty consistent. I don't feel any ping or rattle or anything like that. And honestly, I'm pretty surprised. They also aesthetically look great. It's a shame that keycaps have to cover them up because they do look pretty cool. Next I want to tear down is actually our knob. Now typically a knob is hard mounted to the case, and then you just take a knob off and then take the top of the case off. But in this case from iLovBee, the knob is actually hot swappable. So you can just kind of pull a knob out, which is, I don't think I've ever seen at a $60 price point. Like, I know I keep saying it, but this is crazy. What's also crazy is if you don't want to run a knob, you could just put a switch in here because it is a 5-pin hot swap socket as well. So if you don't want a knob, have another switch. If you don't want to switch, run a knob. I just never thought I'd see a day where a budget keyboard would come with a hot swappable knob. All right, knob aside, now that our keycaps and switches are out, it's time to get into the guts of the keyboard. So we're going to go ahead and flip it over. I'm going to locate all these little holes on the back. There are 6 total, and these have Phillips screws in them. They are deep weld, so you're going to have to use something with a little bit longer reach. So you can't use like the electric screwdriver like I always do. So we'll grab a standard small Phillips screwdriver, and we'll go ahead and pull all those screws out. All right, once all your screws are out, you can go ahead and flip the keyboard back over and separate the top and the bottom. To do this, you just gently lift up on one of the sides, and it should pop right off, as then there's just little tabs holding in place. Once you have it off, you can inspect it and take a look at it, see if there's any issues or whatnot. You can set it aside. Next, we're going to focus on getting our PCB out. Now when you do this, you have to be careful. There's a ribbon cable on the back of the PCB that you don't want to sever or damage. So make sure you always flip it in front and rotate to the rear first. This will always save you from severing a ribbon cable. Once you do this, you can see how much allowance there is in the cable itself. The tolerance for this cable is really tight. You're going to locate the little connector that holds the ribbon cable in and view what style it is. This is a lift kind of connector. So this little connector right here, on the front of it, if you lift it up, like towards you, you'll be able to pull the cable out and free it with no issues. Now you just don't want to pull the cable out or anything like that. And to allow us a little bit more room, we're going to actually lay the PCB down, and we're going to move the case a little bit closer to it. And then you just lift up on the little tab, and the ribbon cable comes free. Now remember, if you're doing this, you also have to do this when you're putting it back together. Make sure you just go slow, place the ribbon in, and close the latch, and you'll be all fine. But back to our PCB and our plate here. Once we have it out, we can see that we have a poly plate, and we can also see we have all our gaskets for our leaf spring mount. And once again, $60, leaf spring mounted. Like, it's shocking. We also have plate mounted stabilizers that we're also going to check, see if they're lubed, and also see if they're wobbly at all. And it looks like we also have a ton of foam. We'll dive deeper into that in just a second, but first, I want to take a look at the case and see what's going on with the case here. So, surprisingly, the only thing in the bottom of the case is this PET pad, and it is extremely thick. It's almost like cardstock thick, which is surprising. It's adhesive to the bottom of the case, so I'm actually not going to pull it all the way out. We can feel the ridges of the glue that it's holding it in, and I don't really want to peel all of that out. On the left-hand side, you can see the battery for the wireless. This is a 3150 milliamp hour battery, and for that, that's pretty much it at the bottom of the case. You just have the PET foam and the battery. So we're going to lay that back in there just like that. And then next, we're going to talk about these leaf springs. Because honestly, a keyboard that's budget friendly with leaf springs is nuts. This supplies the bounce that you feel with a keyboard. And honestly, this has one of my favorite kind of bounces. It's not too much, but it's definitely noticeable. You know it's there. So when you're going across the keyboard, no matter where you're typing, you get a really nice experience because there are these leaf springs all the way across the sides. And then lastly, on the sides here, you can also see the inserts that diffuse the RGB for the side plates. Now, you can take these out. I'm not sure why you would run them with it not in, but you can take them out if you need to clean them or maybe change the colors or something if you wanted to print your own. But other than that, this is the bottom of the case. Lastly, I want to talk about how thick the case is. This case is seriously thick. I don't think I've ever seen a plastic case that has this type of thickness. And with it being this thick, it provides you with multiple different benefits. One is the structure integrity. The keyboard has this weight that you don't really see in a lot of plastic keyboards unless you really mod them and fill them with stuff. Also, it allows you to have this really nice typing experience because the sound signature has so much material to fall back on. It also provides you a nice structure to where the keyboard doesn't feel fragile and you won't break it. Overall, this process is really neat to see. I honestly really can't say that I've seen this type of technology or this type of build in a keyboard that's under $60. That's really cool. So well done, iLovBee. But now that we've talked about it extensively, let's go ahead and jump over to the plate and PCB. All right, now that we have our PCB and plate back, we're gonna go ahead and flip this over so we can separate these. First thing I'm gonna do is locate the Phillips screws on the back. We'll go ahead and grab our screwdriver and we'll just unscrew those and we'll be able to separate the plate from the PCB itself. Once separated, we're gonna set our PCB to the side and we'll focus on our plate for a moment. The first thing I'm gonna check is I'm gonna check to see if our stabilizers are nice and tight in our plate. I wanna make sure that they're not rattly. Now they didn't feel rattly or sound rattly, but we wanna make sure they're tight nonetheless. And I'm happy to report, these are nice and tight. Probably the tightest plate mounted stabilizers I've seen in a budget keyboard. Next, on the back of our polycarbonate plate, you can see our pour-on foam. This is a really nice touch. And I also love that they have these little guides right here. This makes it really easy to line it up, because sometimes this can be slightly painful. So that's really a nice touch as well. Next, we take a look at our PCB, and we can see our 5-pin hot swap sockets with our south-facing RGB. Again, something you don't see on a budget keyboard, south-facing RGBs. And then we have our switch pad or PET pad that also helps with sound. So a lot of great things we see in this keyboard. And honestly, a lot of surprising things. And that's the end of it. So let's go ahead and put everything back together and let's have a chat about the B87. So the iLovBee B87, my final thoughts on it. Personally, I'm shocked. The out-of-box experience for the B87 is crazy. The thick plastic really isn't a joke. This has to be the most premium feeling plastic keyboard I've ever had the pleasure of using. I have a lot of plastic keyboards and I have some really nice ones, but this out-of-box experience at this price point is really unmatched. The design, the attention to detail is honestly top-notch. From the little badging on the back, for the color theme to be all the way around it, it really is beautiful. The features you get from hot swap, south-facing RGB, hot swappable knob, VIA support, these features aren't something you expect to see in a $60 budget-friendly keyboard. Honestly, a lot of these require you to be over $100 to get all of these features in one board. The switches also feel great. For them being an in-house switch, I don't know if they use somebody else like KTT because they do remind me a lot of KTTs, but they were factory lubed and they felt consistent across the entire board. This is amazing to see at $60. And it takes innovation like this and companies keep pushing boundaries of what features we're going to get and what quality we're going to get for the price. This is really pushing a price to performance metric that I really haven't seen in a plastic keyboard market before. And I honestly like it. This is cool. So, once again, big shout out to iLovBee. Thank you for sending over the keyboard. Thank you for taking a look at it. Honestly, I'm very surprised. I didn't know what to expect when you said it was a thick plastic keyboard, but really I'm blown away. And that's it. Thank you for watching. If you made it this far, please drop a like and hit subscribe. And if you want to check out the B87 or any other product featured in the video, the links will be down below in the description box. And that's it. The end. Thank you for watching and keep keyboarding.